Meta went on the offensive this week, publishing a lengthy blog post titled Debunking Claims About News Content on Meta's Platform. Now, it was a frazzled and confusing attempt to spin the story, and there were also brazen contradictions. One fact check that Meta did claimed news is not the reason people Facebook and Instagram. As a content type on Facebook, news is highly substitutable. The reality is that accessing news is simply not the reason most people use our service. Now, putting aside the glaring issues with this claim for 1 minute, Meta actually debunks its own debunk a few paragraphs later when explaining why it shouldn't be liable for copyright payments. Meta provides value to news organisations through our free services. In 2023, we estimate that Facebook Feed sent Australian publishers more than 2.3 billion free clicks for no charge, driving an estimated revenue of $115 million worth of value. Now, both points cannot be true. Either Meta is a massive revenue opportunity for news publishers because of user demand for news, or it isn't. They are simultaneously trying to claim that no one wants news content, and people want news content so badly that they are willing to click a link and leave the platform billions of times every year. Now, in reality, Facebook has a monopolistic hold on Australians, and last year it artificially limited the reach of news so that it could make spurious arguments that its users do not want news. And even if Meta decides to ban news, it does not stop the fact that news content helped build the platform. It has already profited from news, and it is too late to make the argument that news is not needed. And this goes to the heart of the issue with Meta. It has the audacity to label this blog a debunk, which carries the connotation that we are spreading misinformation by arguing against the points. This organisation has no regard for our laws and is ready to lie and obfuscate and bully anyone who disagrees. According to last year's Canberra University Digital Report, roughly half of Australians access Facebook at least each week, and each month those users spend 2,088 minutes roaming through the platform. Comparatively, the biggest Australian news websites, news.com.au and the abc.com.au users, spent 28 and 33 minutes per month on site. Now, do you really think society would be better off if the millions of people who spend thousands of hours every month on Facebook have no access to journalism? What fills that content gap? Meta has a monopolistic grip on Australians, and it answers to no one. It reaches into the Australian advertising sector and pilfers billions of dollars with its market dominance and sends much of that overseas to a tax haven subsidiary in Ireland. The fight is not just about news publishers. It is about every single Australian who values the free flow of information and wants foreign behemoths to pay for the very content which built the platform up from the ground. Now, Darren, very keen to get your thoughts on this. Obviously, it's a very complex story. It's to do with royalties and copyright. And I think for the everyday punter watching at home, they're probably not sure how it will impact them. But what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I've had first-hand experience dealing with Facebook in America in a previous role in New York. And one of the arguments that they've been putting to people and in statements they've been putting out is that consumers don't want to consume news on the Facebook platform. Now, when I worked in New York, I had clients, media publishers, buying video content from me. And one of the places that they put the video content was on their branded pages on Facebook. And a couple of years ago, the traffic absolutely collapsed overnight for many of those publishers. And I spoke to all of them. No one really knew. We were talking to Facebook about why what the reasons might be for that. And some of their executives and account managers admitted to me in conversations that they had tweaked the algorithm to deprioritize premium news content and essentially push up rubbish into people's news feeds. So the argument that people don't want news content on Facebook is a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's a bit like you put a product in a shop window and then you remove it to the back of the shop, out of sight where the shoppers can't see the product, and then you tell the vendor or the seller that no one wants your product. Well, of course, it's been out of sight. That's why no one's buying the product. I think the other point to make is that they are behaving like a digital dictator. Flagrant disregard for local values, local laws, They should be fined under the code, and then you would hope that those fines will be redistributed to local publishers, including regional community publishers, who are really at risk here in terms of their ability and to provide news and content to local communities around Australia. So, it's not a shock in some ways. They behave like the monopoly that they are and have done for some time, and they bully the people that they have agreements with. It's interesting that Google has come out and said that we support the code and we will pay publishers for news content. And if you look at the latest Reuters media survey, which is a really respected report that comes out every year, there's lots of good data points in that where they've surveyed people, consumers. Yes, there's news avoidance and fatigue around conflict, Ukraine, things like that, but overwhelmingly people do want to get news content from Facebook. Another point to make is, right now, at this very moment, Facebook is talking to publishers all over the world and getting them to launch branded pages or groups on WhatsApp where they want publishers to publish links to their news articles. They own WhatsApp. Facebook owns WhatsApp. So
it's part of this push as well to use publishers to help build and establish a platform, become a monopoly, and then, Kel, as soon as something takes off, as soon as it actually takes over the market and there is no alternative, then they say, well, we don't need you anymore.
No. Well, can I look? You guys have spelled out the problem really well. Can I give you the solution? Would that be nice?
I think we'd all like that.
Yeah. Okay. The solution is we need a law passed by the federal government which classifies these so-called platforms like Meta and WhatsApp as publishers. And immediately all the law that applies to publishers would apply to them. Laws to do with defamation, with copyright, with everything else, because those laws are well in place and have been for a long, long time. I'm an author as well as a journalist. I've written far too many books, so I feel very, very protective of copyright, and it is dealing with publishers that protects copyright. It's actually wrong to say that they're platforms. It'd be good to start an international movement and encourage, negotiate with other governments and encourage every government to do the same thing. But we could start it here, and we can say, Facebook, WhatsApp, whatever, you are publishers. And whatever the publishing law says, it now applies to you. I think until we get to that point, we're going to have an ongoing problem that they won't give in to.
I think you're so right on this, Kel. If you could make a legal argument that if they are essentially curating the platform in the way that an editor would for a page, they're tinkering the algorithm, deciding what content goes up. There is obviously accusations
that's publishing.
That they're promoting more progressive content over conservative content. I mean, what is that? That's editing.
Yes,
it's a very good point. But look, let's move on, because while we're talking about Meta, the company is actually planning to cut access to CrowdTangle, its data analytics software, which helps newsrooms track performance. Now, this is important because when Meta makes all of these false claims about news not being wanted, etc., right now, we can look at the data and show to you how it isn't true. This is part of a push by Meta to hide data from the public, so we have no idea what is going on at all. Let's bring the panel back in. Now, Darren, in terms of CrowdTangle, you'd be quite familiar with it, particularly in your role in New York previously, but it is a way that I could say bring up every publisher in Australia, look at what content's working, what goes viral, what doesn't. So there's obviously some theories about why Meta does that, is getting rid of this, but what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, essentially this is denying people access to a tool that allows you to see what people are consuming, sharing, engaging with in terms of content. They own CrowdTangle, they acquired the company by, strengthening the walled garden that is the Facebook platform, denying people access to that data. It's very hard for anyone to verify the claims that they're making, whereas, as you know and I know, that your ratings on Sky are verified and measured by a methodology that the whole industry uses. Newspaper publishers, their sales are also measured by
It's all public data.
Yep, absolutely. And back to Kel's point, I mean, they are in fact a publisher. They should be treated like a publisher. And it's we call them platforms, but they are effectively broadcasters and publishers.
Yeah, it's such a good point. And Kel, we won't know what content is doing well. So what replaces news? And this is a thing that I think the everyday Australian looking at this and saying, well, why should I care about it? Because when you're going to your feed, you don't know now what is going to dominate that feed. Is the content going to be egregiously false? Is it going to be clickbait? Is it all these kind of things? What are your thoughts?
You're right, because what those numbers do is they actually give a voice to the audience. because it means the audience can then tell whoever's producing the content what it is they like, what they don't like. Just this week, Survey 1 for commercial radio, for all radio around Australia, was published, and the numbers are really interesting. I mean, how's Kyle and Jackie O doing? How's Ben Fordham doing? How's Neil's replacement in Melbourne doing, etc.? And it matters because that's the public telling us what they want, telling the program makers and the broadcasters and the publishers of online websites what they want. To decide that we can cut that off, we're going to silence the voice. It's the voice of the readers and the viewers and the listeners that they're silencing. That's what they're doing, and that's wrong.
Yeah, we'll see how it plays out.